Welcome to the Bogosity podcast for the 23rd of September 2013, the podcast that opens the cover before striking. This is your host, Shane Killian, and welcome back this week to Dave Turcotte and Jonathan Loesche.
Howdy. Great to be back.
So, Dave, you wanted to talk about the shootings at the D.C. Navy Yard?
Yeah, just, it's kind of the elephant in the room. We may as well at least somewhat mention it or talk about it to some extent.
Yeah.
Of course, it's a big tragedy and all that, and everybody's running their mouth about what it is. You got all kinds of nuts on the loose between, of course, you have your usual gun control nuts,
I think it took Dianne Feinstein something like 0.4 nanoseconds by my calculation to come out and say we need gun control. I think she actually beat Alex Jones saying it was a false flag operation. So I think Alex needs to step up his game up a bit. He's getting beat.
Indeed. And I was also going to add, there's also the anti-fun nuts who are trying to blame video games once again, because of course, ever since the dawn of entertainment, people have been trying to blame fun for all our problems. And then, of course, you have the average nut, like Alex Jones, who's just...
Alex Jones is an average nut?
He's just standard crazy.
I'd hate to see the exceptional ones.
Well, of course, he's already spewing that it's a false flag. I'm sure if this guy gets the wrong order at Burger King, he probably claims that they're in on the NWO, Illuminati, Cobra Commander, Rita Repulsa, the Decepticons, or any combination of all of them that week.
The guy delivering the pizza is 5 minutes late, so he must have implanted a microphone from the government.
Indeed.
Well, I think Burger King would have to start serving GMO-free stuff before he'd ever order from them. Remember, this is the same guy who accused, Minute Maid of causing gayness, of causing homosexuality.
Oh, God, I remember. I remember that. That was just brutal. Seriously, anybody out there who listens to Alex Jones and doesn't listen to him for comedy, what's wrong with you?
Yeah. You can buy GMO-free salt now?
Yeah, I heard about that.
I'm so relieved. I just didn't want to accidentally buy salt that was genetically modified.
That's one of those things where if you weren't already on the boat that this anti-GMO stuff is complete nonsense, then you might want to realize now that you're getting scammed.
But you wanted to talk about Elizabeth Hasselbeck?
Yes.
And she's on Fox News, so we're getting the crazy from both sides, left and right.
Yes, she actually, on an episode of Fox and Friends, suggested that it's not gun control, which instead we need to have a registry of who buys video games.
Wow.
What? What? What is wrong with you, lady? Seriously, what is wrong with you?
Is there some kind of program to take all of the really crazy people and give them jobs on cable news so we can all keep an eye on them and know where they are at all times or something?
That's what I want to know. And you know what? And I had this conversation with somebody the other day, actually, who basically was trying to say, well, video games are getting more realistically violent, and I really don't want them in the hands of crazy people. Listen, crazy people are going to do crazy things no matter whatever is wrong with them. It's the fact that they're crazy.
Right. Not
the fact that they play video games. Just like this guy at the Navy Yard. It turned out that he was hearing voices in his head, and people were warned ahead of time, and they did nothing. They did nothing. And, Grand Theft Auto 5 just came out. Let's blame that! No! You're not getting to the real problem. And this happens with every shooting. With every single mass shooting, you have the same issue. You want to blame something, but you don't want to get to the actual problem. Let's go all the way back to Columbine. They were trying to blame Doom for that one, or Marilyn Manson. It wasn't the game Doom or Marilyn Manson that caused them to shoot people. It was the fact that they were getting constantly bullied, and nobody went in to stop people from bullying them.
Yeah. Well, she's saying, we need to look at it, because he had an obsession with video games, and then he went around and started shooting people. How many people play video games who don't end up shooting people?
Well, gee.
Grand Theft Auto 5 just became the first video game to gross $1 billion in its first week, so...
Wow. So we should see mass shootings just starting up all over the place now.
Well, not only that, but it also happens to be the first video game to get blamed for a mass shooting that came out after a mass shooting.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Grand Theft Auto 5 just came out 2 days ago? Or 3 days ago, something like that?
Crazy people.
Crazy people indeed.
I remember when I was growing up, it was Bugs Bunny cartoons, because kids would imitate what they see on the cartoons. And I don't remember reading any reports of a child dead at the bottom of a cliff, having leaped to his death with springs on his shoes, holding a sign that says "Yipe."
Yeah, I also don't remember kids painting into rocks, a tunnel, and then magically getting trains to come out and hit people. And last I checked, Acme isn't a real corporation.
I think there is a company called Acme.
Is there?
Yeah, I know there's a construction company called Acme.
Oh, damn, you learn something new every day.
I think it's one of those kind of generic names that a lot of people have just used and no one really owns it. But
like Stuff Co. We do stuff.
Yeah, it's just like, it's just such a shame. I live in a town that, up until the early 90s was very much controlled by the Baptist Church, and the city of Jacksonville's history can basically be written as a lot of fun stuff could have happened, but the church decided it couldn't. And it's, whether it's Elvis Presley shaking his hips and...
Yeah.
Because the girls would watch his hips going back and forth and they'd get hypnotized.
This honestly just sounds like old Puritan-style nonsense. The olden days where if you were doing anything outside of the Bible, you were wrong.
That's actually what they said about Mozart, because he was getting a lot of his operas from, like, Greek mythology, and, they had all sorts of stuff to say about that. Oh, that's, pagan ritual stuff.
Well, when they couldn't convince people that, doing anything fun outside of reading the Bible is bad, well, let's just blame it for anything bad that ever happens. I think that's honestly where it comes from, and it's just something that has kind of stuck because for some reason it still works. So, this is the political party that's all for your rights and small government and liberty. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, well, like they are here in North Carolina, because we're Republican tight in both houses, and we've got a Republican governor now. And we actually have this good system of charter schools. My daughter goes to a charter school. It's great from a libertarian standpoint. It's not everything we want, of course, but at least I have the option of sending her to a charter school, and the way it works, or the way it's supposed to work, is every penny the government would have spent on her in the government school would go to the charter school instead. And I've covered before how, they tend to cheat and charter schools end up with less money and still do better. But it's just amazing the lengths they will go to try and discredit them. Right now, 170 letters of intent have been filed to the North Carolina Superintendent of Public Instruction, June Atkinson. And these are all people wanting to form charter schools in the state. Now, it's just a statement of intent, so there aren't going to be 170 new charter schools popping up. Last year, they got 161 letters. Only 70 of them ended up applying, and of those, only 26 were approved. But the Raleigh News and Observer, and Raleigh is the capital of North Carolina, they're trying to make it out like there's going to be this sudden influx of hundreds of new charter schools, and it's really going to be horrible, so I really want to throw brickbats at them for this very biased article they have. Quote, "Some parents apparently think charters are like having private schools within the public system because they are free from many rules, such as prescribed teaching methods that govern regular schools, and they don't have to answer to local districts. But when charter schools were authorized, the idea was that a limited number could experiment with approaches to teaching and organization in ways that might transfer to regular public schools, making charters laboratories of sorts. No, the idea was to give parents a choice and promote competition between charters and government schools, which would result in both kinds of schools improving."
Of course, it's not real competition at all when you still got to pay the other one, but, you get what you can.
At least you have sort of a choice of who to pay. You're not just stuck into the government schools no matter what.
That's true.
We had a charter school for academically gifted students, and it was actually the year I graduated, Newsweek ranked it the number 7 high school in America.
Wow. One of the charter schools in North Carolina, I forget which one, consistently makes the top 20 in the country.
But at the time we had this thing called the FCAT, the Florida Comprehensive Assessment Test, standardized government test. We took it and aced it every year, but all the other schools failed. So what was the school board's idea? We're going to dismantle the charter schools because it's causing a brain drain.
Yeah.
And we're going to force them to go back to the government schools, and then the government schools will all get an A grade.
Yeah, I can probably guess how well that worked.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what they're saying with these 170 letters. They said, quote, "That seems like a lot of new schools and a lot of public money taken out of traditional schools. Oh, boo-hoo-hoo."
Sounds like garbage to me.
And they also said, while the history of charters includes some success stories, it also includes problematic examples of racially imbalanced schools and other schools not living up to academic standards. Okay, you know that thing they do on Wikipedia that says, citation needed?
Yeah, just... No. Just stop while you're ahead. Just go back to the drawing board, come up with a better thing to talk about to disparage charter schools, and then come back when you have a real answer, not racism. Anybody could say that.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm not going to discount the possibility of a charter school being, racist or not living up to its standards, but if that happens, the parents are going to pull their kids out of that school and it's going to fail. I have a friend of mine, I've known him for over 20 years, but I mean, he is incredibly liberal. And one thing he pointed out to me was there was this charter school up in, I think, Catawba County somewhere, and the guy in charge of it just totally misappropriated all the funds and everything like that, and he got arrested and convicted, and the charter school, went bankrupt and closed down. And he was trying to make out that's a reason why charter schools are bad. No, that's a reason why charter schools are good, because now all of the other charter schools are going to look at that and say, well, we don't want that to happen to us. We need to make sure that everything's on the up and up. Whereas that thing happens in spades in one government school district after another. Nothing happens. No one seems to get prosecuted.
Indeed, of course, whenever you're in the public light, it's totally different than when you're in the private light.
That's because they have the special title of school board member to misappropriate funds.
Yeah, it's called sovereign immunity. So, any of you guys seen Breaking Bad?
Big fan.
I watched the first season, but then kind of got lost afterward because I don't watch TV much. But I've heard good things.
Yeah, it really gets better, second, third season. I'm catching up on it on Netflix. I'm in the middle of the fourth season, but I love the libertarian themes running all the way through it.
I think I'll have to dig out the link, but I'm pretty sure Bryan Cranston said he voted for Gary Johnson.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if creator Vince Gilligan is a libertarian or not, but he still puts all these little things in there that libertarians would like, and there was a minor character that was in 3 or 4 episodes who actually self-identified as a libertarian. And he was a good guy, despite the fact that he was making meth. Other than that, he was a good guy and smart and everything, So I encourage everyone to check it out, and it really is one of those I think you have to watch from the start, but I bring it up because, not only because it's a good show, everyone should go check it out, but also there was a Digital Spy interview with Vince Gilligan, and what he said was that online streaming saved the show after its second season where ratings were just lagging on AMC. What he said was, quote, "I have to say, Netflix, God bless them because they really saved our bacon. It is very likely that Breaking Bad would have been canceled after Season 2. Maybe we might have made it to Season 3. If not for Netflix, if not for the advent of streaming video on demand."
Yeah, well, this is somebody who learned his lesson early. When the market is changing, you have to innovate.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember who it was. I think it might have been Kevin Pollak. He did some kind of speech, just jumping in post to say it was in fact Kevin Spacey, and the link to the video is in the show notes, where he was talking about making a TV show to run on Netflix as its initial run, and you just make the whole season and then post all the episodes on Netflix at once so people could just run right through it, and how much that was a better way of doing it. I'll have to dig that up.
Which would be a great idea.
Yeah, well, they're doing it.
Yeah, well, like I said, it's come to a point where the world is changing, and of course the market is changing, and if you don't keep up, you're going to fall under, unless you decide to go to Big Daddy GovCo and get your little legislation, in which, of course, a lot of people are trying to do, because God forbid you put any work into it.
And really, Netflix streaming didn't really take off until they were in the third or fourth season anyway, and he even mentioned that in the article, the fact that he even gave a shout out to the Pirate Bay and torrent sites.
Oh yeah, I like that. What he said was, he was asked if online pirates had played a role, and he said, quote, "They probably did, if I'm being honest. The piracy is certainly a double-edged sword. It does disincentivize companies from making their products if they feel they can't earn an honest living off of them. But on the other hand, there was an upside to the piracy, because it got the word out in regards to Breaking Bad. For a long time, before Netflix really had its advent, it was the only way folks around the world could catch up with the show at all. And being aware of that, there has to be a bit of gratitude on my part for that having happened."
Of course.
So kudos to Vince Gilligan.
Indeed. Kudos. Finally, somebody who learned this lesson now.
If the powers that be had embraced this a long time ago, they could have nipped piracy in the bud. The reason why even pirates are paying money to Netflix is because it's easier. If you want to download Breaking Bad on the Pirate Bay, you got to search for it, and there's all these different versions, and who knows what quality they are, or even if it's the real thing. And then you got to sit there and wait for it to download. Netflix, you just fire it up and go.
Not to mention the uncertainty of whether or not the file is even safe.
Right.
Whereas with Netflix, it's just a click of a couple buttons and, you have your show and pretty good quality depending on your television or however you watch it.
I cut the cord on cable about 6 months ago, and do I really need 20 billion different channels of The Real Housewives?
Well, that's the thing about Netflix in general. It's one of those things, though, that if you watch something that's live, for example, I'm a fan of professional wrestling. I'm also a fan of football. That's not something that Netflix can necessarily cater to because they don't do live streaming yet. But hey, who knows? Maybe in the future they might get on that.
All right, but I'm hoping this will have an effect on the cable system because I've been a Dish Network subscriber for like 15 years or something. I think they're a great company, but recently, finances being what they are, I've had to scale back on my channels, and in the future I might scale all the way back to just the locals, which is just a few bucks a month, and then use that money to get Hulu Plus, which is, has different stuff from Netflix a lot of the time, and just do that, and then just, try and just keep caught up with everything that way. And I'm kind of hoping that as people do that, there'll be enough pressure on the cable companies and the cable networks to let us do a la carte, because if I could look at the shows I want to do, my kids like Nickelodeon or the Disney Channel, I like Discovery Channel, Breaking Bad, I think it's on AMC, and when you just select the channels we want, and you just pay so much per channel, as opposed to this package thing we're all forced into. They tell Dish Network and all the other companies, hey, if you include this channel in a package, you also have to include these other channels, and you've got all these different companies saying that, and it gets to be a confusing mess, so you end up with these huge packages of, 200 channels, 190 of which you might not even watch.
Yeah, and there's also one other benefit to Netflix, though.
What's that?
No commercials.
That's true.
No commercials at all.
Hulu, that's the thing about Hulu Plus. They show you commercials even if you subscribe.
Yeesh. Well, I hope, honestly, that more people start to innovate like Netflix, and maybe if people, keep using Netflix and put pressure on the cable companies, that they'll finally come to the 21st century as well.
You're listening to the Bogosity Podcast. You say you don't like Bitcoin? Why not? Oh, because it's not gold. No problem. Just go to coins.bogosity.tv and you'll be taken to Coinable, where you can buy gold or silver coins or bars with your Bitcoins, with literally up-to-the-minute spot pricing. Now there's no reason not to jump on the Bitcoin bandwagon. Whether you're a Bitcoin miner, service operator, Bitcoin business owner, or market speculator, you can get gold and silver from reputable dealers. And Coinable has Bitcoin liquidity for fast processing of your order. Coinable even utilizes a special shipping infrastructure to ensure that your investment arrives safely at your door. And you know what? By going to coins.bogosity.tv, you won't pay a penny more, a Satoshi more for your purchase. But you'll help this podcast. You can even sell your gold and silver for Bitcoin as well. Coinable is your Bitcoin to gold marketplace. So go to coins.bogosity.tv and start turning your Bitcoins into gold now. Bogosity.tv and all of its services are hosted at GoDaddy.com. I've been a satisfied GoDaddy customer for over 10 years now. Their prices are great, and their 24/7 support is second to none. So I'm happy to be able to give you this special offer. Just sign up for any new domain, web hosting, email, or many other services and get 20% off by typing in the code WOWNOBOGON. That's WOWNOBOGON. Because there's nothing bogus about these savings on quality internet service. Get your own .com with a personalized email address, or establish your online business in a snap, all for 20% off. And you'll help this podcast too. Just go to GoDaddy.com and use the code WOWNOBOGON. Welcome back to the Bogosity Podcast with John, Dave, and Shane, and I want to play a quick game with you. It's called Onion, Not Onion. I read out a story synopsis, and you tell me if it's a real story or from the Onion. Okay, are you ready?
Okay.
An undercover investigation has exposed the criminal activity of having illegal, underground, covert dinner parties.
Please tell me that's the Onion.
Not Onion.
Nope, it's real. And it's from New York, if that tells you anything.
Well, I should have known.
Yes, apparently New York is experiencing a scourge of these criminal underground dinner parties, and all of this was brought to light as the result of a CBS 2 investigation. Ooh, they sent in their undercover cameras to expose this heinous activity.
You can't not laugh at this. This is one of those things that's just so absurd that, as it's been pointed out many times before, satire is dead. Satire is completely dead. When you have something so ridiculous that satire can't even come close, the genre is dead.
But the thing is how just loaded with buzzwords it is. Like they say, 8 people who didn't know each other eating a meal in a stranger's home. Ooh, it's a stranger's home. There's stranger danger.
Stranger danger!
It may look like a dinner party, but it's really an underground supper club.
Oh, God.
So who's running it? Cobra Commander?
These are like chefs who are just starting off and don't have the kind of capital you need to start up a restaurant in New York City, so this is the next best thing.
Well, actually, one of them they said wasn't a chef. She just cooks the food, so I guess maybe in New York, chef is like a protected term. You have to have a license or something to call yourself a chef.
Which is ridiculous to begin with. Of course, New York City, known for its beloved bureaucracy.
And of course, CBS 2 made sure to point out that they are completely unregulated.
Oh, no.
The horror! The horror! And the health department actually said, quote, in New York City, people who offer meals to the public for money are considered food service establishments and need permits. The city does not allow meals to be served to members of the public in someone's home.
Oh, there's that wonderful word again. Permit.
Yeah. What about public? What does that mean? If I have a friend over for dinner and I make dinner for him, is he not a member of the public?
Well, there's the difference, Shane.
Am I running an underground dinner party?
But the difference is you don't charge him money. You're trying to get an evil profit.
Ah, so as soon as money changes hands, then all of a sudden it becomes a dangerous activity that needs to be regulated.
But of course, bureaucracy runs rampant everywhere. Oh yes, there was a time where I once worked for the local government.
Oh, for shame! That's your shameful past coming out to light.
Yes, indeed. There was a time before I was a libertarian where I once worked with the city. And oh my god, did they run things terribly.
What department did you work with?
Oh, you could say I'm like Ron Swanson. I worked for Park and Rec.
Oh boy.
In fact, I had a very specific job. I worked at the beaches and I sat in the parking lots, and they gave me a fancy title. I was a beach constable.
Wow. So you got paid to lay around on the beach and do what?
I had to sit in beach parking lots and make sure that cars came in and had a beach parking permit on their car.
Oh, and what if they didn't?
Then they had to get out.
So you had like a gun and you could make them get out and everything?
No, I had to tell them to get out.
Oh.
If they didn't listen, I had to call the supervisor. The town I live in, West Haven, Connecticut, it's a beach town. You would think, oh gee, we have a nice beach town. Let's have tourism. Nope. Most of our beaches, it's resident-only parking, and that's it. But here's the kicker. Some of them did allow paying. There is a place called Morse Park, and there was also a little skate park there, and it was right next to a little place called Chick's Restaurant. The person would have to sit in the skate park parking lot, and they would have to charge people $10 to get in. Now here's where it gets funny. The restaurant right next to them let people park for free to go to the beach. And the baseball park, which was no further from the beach, also had no kind of parking, buying, or anything like that. So, you basically had me sitting in a parking lot where I had to watch people park in other places and come nowhere near me because I would charge them $10, whereas they could park for free right next to me and be no further from the beach. And yet, when I would work at other lots, that didn't have pay for parking, people would be offering me money to let them park, and they told me no, I couldn't accept the money, even though people were like, and this is no joke, one guy actually flashed me $100 bill. Yeah, he wanted to park because it was a great beach, and it was just absurd. Just complete bureaucracy.
Yeah, and no business sense whatsoever.
No, none. You would never see this in a free market. In a free market, they'd be like, okay, we'll take your money, we'll charge you this much, you can park, and you can go have fun on the beach. Never see that in a free market. Never see that kind of nonsense. Only in a bureaucracy.
The area I live in, it's an old historic neighborhood, so there's a lot of like little commercial streets and corridors, and what was supposed to happen as part of being in a historic district, I get the lovely thing of paying an extra 5% in property taxes for a mobility fee, which is supposed to pay for mass transit. Keep in mind, this is the city that Shane, we talked about the monorail that goes to nowhere.
Oh yeah.
What they were supposed to do with part of this mobility fee was they were going to have a bus system that ran through the neighborhood from like 6 o'clock at night till 4 o'clock in the morning when last call is. This is the ironic thing. The transportation board said, oh, there's no demand for it. Then somebody rented one of the buses, paid like, I forget how much it was to rent a bus. I think like 4,000 people paid $5 a ticket to use it that one night just to show, yeah, we want this service.
Yeah. I mean, there were some other spots here that were like pretty questionable. For example, I could think of another one, South Street. It wasn't a swimming beach. It was terrible for swimming, but it was great for fishing. And people loved to go there to fish, and it used to be a pay lot, and they used to make a lot of money because people would go there to fish. Well, then the locals complained that the out-of-towners kept coming, so they stopped that. But here's the thing. There is a mosque that is right across from our parking lot, and the parking lot that they use is right next to this parking lot, and so people now just park there for free and walk in anyway. So you basically have not solved your problem at all, which wasn't a real problem to begin with. And these guys are still coming down to fish, which they can't even do that in peace anymore because Connecticut now has a saltwater fishing licensing law. Makes no sense, but they even admitted that that was only to make money. But there was a lot of nonsense with this. And I worked there for about 5 years until I stopped because they just didn't want me anymore for whatever reason.
Gee, I wonder why.
They have their little bureaucracy and they didn't want it questioned.
Yeah. Well, here's a legal question for you. Who is protected by the First Amendment? What people have the rights that are listed in the First Amendment?
Isn't it supposed to be everybody?
Well, not according to Congress. At least not when it comes to freedom of the press. This is something they've been trying to restrict for many years. Recently, the Senate Judiciary Committee voted for what they called common sense press control. Gotta love that word, common sense.
Oh, God. Okay, where do I even start? What happened to freedom of the press?
Well, supposedly, this is about, protecting the freedom of the press of journalists and guaranteeing that they can do what they do. But in the process, they delineate who the government will consider to be an authorized journalist. You have to be authorized to get freedom of the press.
Oh, gee.
I think we call that propaganda ministers in a more honest society.
Yeah, I think we also call that bureaucratic nonsense. Since when did we decide that a random group of schmucks, there's that wonderful word again.
Gotta love it.
A random group of schmucks that all of a sudden they decide what is true and untrue, because that's essentially what they're saying.
Well, the committee approved it 13-5, and the main perpetrators were Chuck Schumer, Dick Durbin, and our old friend Dianne Feinstein.
Oh, you gotta love her.
But they actually defined covered journalists, meaning journalists who had all these, protections under whatever bill they're trying to draft up. But they defined it as, quote, an employee, independent contractor, or agent of an entity that disseminates news or information. So what does that mean? Do we count? I mean, we're disseminating news and information.
They don't like us, so we don't count.
No, we don't count because, they talk about things like that. They actually use the term activist bloggers. As if a blog isn't a press and you don't get your free press rights when you write a blog.
Boy.
I remember a number of years ago, there was someone going around with an actual professional, TV camera recording what the TSA was doing before it really started to be covered everywhere, all the things they were doing, the sexual touching and everything. And they got this out on the internet, and a lot of people got attention. And the few times the people in the mainstream media covered it, they were calling things like vigilante journalists was one of the terms they used. Vigilante journalist.
Yeah, you gotta love them buzzwords. Words that incite things like fear, sadness, anger.
I don't know, sounds kind of like Batman to me. You know, like you slide down the pole, you know, when you get to the bottom of the pole, you're dressed in your cape and your mask, and then you grab your TV camera and you get in the Batmobile.
Yeah, but does he do the Chris Nolan voice thing where he's like, where are they? I hope not. That'd be, if somebody came up to me and was like, where are they? I wouldn't want to give them any information. Get away from me, you're scaring me.
I'll tell you who scares me is Feinstein. Here's what she said, quote, I can't support it if everyone who has a blog has a special privilege. So our rights are now special privileges. Or if Edward Snowden were to sit down and write this stuff, he would have a privilege. I'm not going to go there.
Oh, jeez. You know what? Never mind. Feinstein is like, where is he?
Where's Edward Snowden?
Exactly.
No, so this bill is not going to put the protections where it's actually needed. It's not going to help Edward Snowden. It's not going to help Chelsea Manning and Julian Assange, because they're not in this protected class with a special privilege who are apparently the only ones who get free press rights.
No, they don't like them. And if you're not part of the cool kids club, you don't get the protections.
Well, because we've pretty much got people all over the place supporting universal free speech rights. Free press rights are actually more thorough than free speech rights because, you know, they keep finding all these little exceptions to free speech rights. But I like the way Michael Cloud put it when talking about the difference between free speech rights and free press rights. He said, can you print fire in a crowded theater?
Very intriguing.
Yeah. You can imagine yelling fire in a crowded theater. Everyone, you know, runs out in panic, which actually wouldn't happen. I don't think anyone actually believes that. But imagine walking around handing little pieces of paper with fire! Exclamation point, you know, written on it. You know, it's hard to see any harm coming from that.
You know, that actually reminds me of an old George Carlin joke where he says, you can't joke about a bomb on a plane.
Yeah.
But how about a riddle? Or amusing? Or a funny anecdote?
God love Carlin.
But at the same time, you know, going back to Feinstein, I'm starting to think maybe she would be more like Dr. Claw. I'll get you next time, Snowden. Next time.
But it's just like Jim Babka said on the podcast back when I had him on March 18th. You are a press. I am a press. Anyone who speaks out on current events or disseminates information is a press under the Constitution. The Constitution gives the federal government no power whatsoever to say who is an authorized journalist, and our founders would be absolutely horrified if they were here now and saw this happening.
Yeah, but of course, they'd be horrified at a lot of things.
That's true. If that whole spinning in a grave thing actually happened, then all we'd have to do to solve our energy problems is just hook up generators to all their coffins, and then they just spin them around.
Indeed, who knows? They might even find oil. But then again, the U.S. Army might invade them for it, so...
Well, something else that's going on, measles is on the rise. And we're actually on track to have the worst year in measles in over a decade.
Let me guess. Anti-vaxxers.
Pretty much. Between January 1st and August 24th, there were 159 cases of measles reported. If that keeps up, that number will end up being higher than any year since 1996 when it was 500. Now, this is still down from the hundreds of thousands we had before vaccination, but you know, it's just like you said, David, 92% of those stricken with measles were not vaccinated. And the biggest outbreak was in a New York community where people don't vaccinate for religious reasons.
You know, anti-vaxxers, it's time for some real talk. You know, for a long time, you've gone out of your way to say that vaccinations are terrible for your kids and all that. And while as a libertarian, I wouldn't force you to get vaccinations for your kids, I don't think anybody among us would actually recommend forcing you. That would be just as horrible as what you're doing, and you are horrible for doing it. This isn't a game, people. People are dying from diseases that we all thought were dead. Straight up dead.
Yeah, they thought they had completely eradicated measles from the U.S. in 2000.
Exactly.
But, you know, you get these little pockets where people aren't vaccinated. You have people coming into the country from overseas where they still have measles, and it gets in and it just starts going again.
Folks, you have no excuse anymore. You have no excuse. You all cited that stupid study, which we all found was completely bogus, and most of us knew was bogus from the beginning.
Yeah.
And the fact is, you have no excuses anymore. There's plenty of information out there to tell you the truth, and the fact is, I know that you're scared because you don't know better. But the fact is, you're going to be even more scared when your kids are dying from diseases that we thought were extinct.
You're listening to the Bogosity podcast from Bogosity.tv. History is written by the winners, and so apparently is economics. That's why there's Liberty Classroom. Probably the best single learning resource for history and economics on the web, Liberty Classroom teaches U.S. history, Western Civ, and economics from actual university professors. There's lots of free material to get you started, including introductory lectures on all these subjects. And when you sign up, you'll get the full site's content for just $99 a year, less than the price of 2 cups of coffee a month. And if you type in the promo code Bogosity in all caps, you'll get your first year for just $88. Lectures are available in both video and audio format, so you can watch or listen to them on your computer, your phone or tablet, or in your car. Learn at your own pace about the subjects you're interested in and become a more effective debater. You'll also get access to lots of supplemental materials and even the professors themselves via the discussion forum and even live video chats. Inform yourself against the myths and propaganda of our society. Visit libertyclassroom.com. Welcome back to the Bogosity podcast. We are Dave, John, and Shane when put in alphabetical order. But now let's see which one gets to the top when sorted by biggest Bogon emitter. And this week, it goes to Matt Walsh. And we probably don't have to, although we will, go any further than the title of this article. Christianity has done more for science than atheism ever could.
Oh my god, is he serious?
He's perfectly serious.
I repeat.
You think your sides are splitting now. Okay, listen to this. Evolution, atheistic, nihilistic, materialistic, mindless evolution must be taught as fact without other ideas presented to compete with the theory.
Oh, God. There's those buzzwords again that we keep talking about. Nihilistic.
I wonder what he thinks about atheistic, nihilistic, materialistic, mindless gravity.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, I've seen in a lot of libertarian circles about this whole Common Core thing. If it's gonna make sure evolution is taught in the class and not, I might actually like this thing.
Well, there's one. I'm not sure if it's the Common Core or what it's called. I covered it on the podcast like a year or two ago. But it's not done by the federal government. It's just the states getting together and say, okay, let's hammer out this thing. And I'm kind of more in favor of that because at least you don't have federal bureaucrats telling the states what to do.
I had to stop there for a minute because I couldn't breathe. But
you back with us?
I'm back with us for a minute. If I read any more, though,
okay.
I might, be in those spinning graves that we were talking about earlier.
Don't drink anything, okay?
I'll try not
It's
to.
not TV. We can't show a spit take, so we don't need you drowning on us.
I'll try not to. Although reading this would drive some people to drink.
Proponents say that atheistic evolution is the only thing that belongs in the classroom because religion and science just don't mix. No, we say that because evolution is the only theory compatible with the observed facts.
Just reading it like that, just sort of ranting about.
It really is. It's a rant.
I
got no problems with rants, but geez.
Okay, okay, you could, in theory, make the idea that yes, a lot of scientific discoveries were made through the monks or monasteries or whatnot, but that's because, frankly, up until a couple hundred years ago, that was the only place you could find anyone slightly educated.
And they were the only places that had money.
Yeah.
Not to mention, though, that this clod, another great word, by the way, this clod here seems to ignore the fact that religion has stifled scientific growth throughout most of its history.
Well, that's what he says, quote, and do you see it coming? Do you see what he's going to call atheism here? Some religions don't gel with science. Religions like Scientology or, say, atheism. Yes, atheism is a religion.
Excuse me.
Okay, we might lose Dave for a while, so...
Oh my god!
Yeah, he actually says Church of Atheism.
Hey, I pray at my altar of Christopher Hitchens. I pray to St. Christopher.
Wasn't that actually a thing once?
Well, actually, there is a Church of Atheism, but the reason why it exists is so atheists who want to get married but don't want a religious preacher. You know, you can go to the Church of Atheism website and just sign up for it, fill in your information, and become an ordained minister, I think in all 50 states. And then you can do the secular marriage without any religion mixed in. But that's the only Church of Atheism I'm aware of.
Yeah, last I checked, we don't meet on Sundays to talk about how we don't believe things. We don't have bake sales to talk about our non-beliefs.
Quoting George Carlin again, we don't have a place where we gather every week to compare clothing.
I know a buddy of mine is trying to start up the reformed sect of Pastafarianism to get out of Obamacare.
Yeah.
And there is actual legal precedence of representing Pastafarianism in Florida, so...
Oh, cool. Well, he actually quotes Chesterton, quote, "A multiplicity and subtlety and imagination about the varieties of life, which is far beyond the bald or breezy platitudes of most ancient or modern philosophy. In a word, there is more in it." He's talking about Christianity here. "It finds more in existence to think about. It gets more out of life." So Christianity has meaning and wonder and gets more out of life, and atheists are all just, miserable and don't have anything good in their life or whatever.
Well, last I checked, I just burst out laughing a few minutes ago, so I don't think that makes me miserable at all.
No.
I'm a sort of a bitter curmudgeon. That's because I'm a fan of the Jaguars.
Well, that doesn't help.
Yeah, that would make anybody miserable.
I love the way Jeff Mallett put it in his newspaper comic Fraz. That's one of my favorite newspaper comics. I forget what date it is, but I'll stick it in the show notes. They were talking about how to find rainbows and how high up the sun has to be and the mist has to be opposite the sun and stuff like that. But he said, "Science doesn't replace wonder. It just tells you how to find it."
Sounds good. Sounds accurate.
Like, for example, this is Walsh again. "Your faith does not conflict with science. Well, unless it says that the earth was created in 6 days, or plants came before the sun, or rabbits chew cud."
Yeah, a little contradictory there. Just kind of saying.
But, he does the same thing. He goes down the list of all the scientists who were Christians, and, of course, most of them are pre-Darwin, which kind of ruins it right there. But it's like you said, like in the cases of Galileo and Kepler, they only made their discoveries by going against what the Christian church preaches. And in the case of Kepler, it took him decades to tear away all of the dogma that he had been brought up with to finally say, I'm going to discard all of this and I'm going to go with the data and see what it says and discover that planets orbit in ellipses. Just something simple like that, something relatively simple like that, took him decades because of his religious upbringing.
Indeed, not to mention the whole fact that they tried to jail him practically over it, so...
Yeah, they did things like they accused his mom of being a witch and crated her up and took her away somewhere, and he had to do all this stuff to try and free her.
Sounds like it could be a movie.
I think it'd make a good movie.
Probably would. What do you think should star in it? I'm thinking the dude who was in the original Highlander movies, Lambert.
Yeah.
He'd make a good Galileo.
I think Johnny Depp is Kepler. Johnny Depp can play anything.
Probably.
But it's like he's listing all he's doing is listing scientists who are Christians. But just because a scientist is a Christian doesn't make Christianity right. Newton believes quite fervently in alchemy, and that doesn't make alchemy right.
No. In fact, alchemy sucks in RPGs too, so yeah, you don't get any bonus points with me.
But he talks about things like the rise of scientific knowledge in the 1600s and how it was Christian civilizations that advanced, and that happened because they were Christian civilizations. Well, then why did it take 1600 years to happen? What were the Christians doing for the first 1600 years?
Reading the Bible?
And really, wasn't most of that just rediscovering old stuff from Rome and Greece?
Yeah, the stuff that the early Christians destroyed.
The fact is, this guy's a clod.
Here's how much of a clod he is. This is kind of how he closes it out. Quote, "Really, we must get atheism away from education before we all end up like the modern atheist's greatest prophet, Nietzsche, who died insane and naked, eating his own feces in a mental institution. This is not the sort of fate we should wish upon our children. Okay, the reason why Nietzsche went insane and died is because he got syphilis. You know what happens if you get syphilis and you pray? You go crazy and die. You know what happens with science? You go down to Walmart, give them $4, get a round of antibiotics, and you're cured.
Yeah, I'll give that a +1 to science.
Yeah, science! I've got a ringtone of Jesse Pinkman from Breaking Bad saying that. That's my text notification.
Nice.
Sorry, folks, but regardless of whether you're a Christian or an atheist or whatever, there's just no way that Matt Walsh is not this week's biggest Bogon emitter. So, guys, you want to play Onion, Not Onion again?
Sure.
All right, here we go. A group of female teenage martial artist evangelical fashion models are warning against the dangers of sexually transmitted demons originating from spells from the Harry Potter books. Onion or not onion?
I'm going to say it's not the Onion only because it's a screenplay to a terrible Sci-Fi Channel movie.
My first thought was a program for the CW.
That's true, but it's neither of those, nor is it the Onion. It's this week's Idiot Extraordinaire. I mean, come on. How can you possibly write something this insane? I mean, the Onion, the CW, they're going to have to step up their game here.
Seriously, this is real?
Yes, this is absolutely real. They're 3 young women named Brynne Larson and Tess and Savannah Scherkenback. This first came to my attention. I'm subscribed to the BBC YouTube channel, and apparently they're doing a documentary about these morons. Why, I don't know. I mean, they've got the babe factor going on, but other than that, I don't see how any of these idiots has anything resembling a positive contribution to make to society.
Only if they add a laughing track.
But I mean, listen to what some of these girls said. This is Savannah, quote, "We just totally really hit it off. I don't know what happens, but somehow you bond when you're punching one another and throwing knees. We were totally working out together, learning how to fight and how to defend ourselves and defend others and some junk." Okay, I might be paraphrasing slightly, but not as much as you'd think. Yeah, they're black belts in karate, which is a whole other kind of bogosity. But now they've decided they want to fight demons, so maybe they've been watching too much Buffy or Supernatural.
I can't not laugh at this. Where do you find these people? And I'm not just talking about you, I'm talking about anybody. Where do you find these people? Seriously. Why aren't they being laughed out of existence?
I'm convinced this is did neither of you two see the movie The Last Exorcism?
No.
No?
Well, up until the last 10 minutes, it's actually basically the whole premise of it is they're going to make a TV documentary, and he's going to expose how exorcists are all, con men, and it goes off from there. If the BBC is doing a documentary, these people have to be putting a front. This has got to be it's got to be a work.
I think I read something about the videographer. It's not in any of the news stories I posted, but I think I read somewhere the videographer for this, who's going around with him, following him around and everything, started out kind of neutral, and now he's convinced that exorcisms are complete and total bunk.
Boy, this reminds me of a scene in the movie Kung Pao, where the guy is like, "We trained him wrong on purpose, as kind of a joke." That's what I'm thinking when I see something like this. How? It's baffling. It's honest to goodness baffling. This is worse than what you would see on the Sci-Fi Channel. At least then they have something so bad it's entertaining, like the Sharknado. This is...
Well, listen to what Brynne said, quote, "I'd have to say my special skills are probably the enforcer or the lead exorcist. I can totally take on those demons."
Power Rangers is more realistic than this.
Here's what they said on Harry Potter.
Spells and things that you're reading in the Harry Potter books, those aren't just something that are made up. Those are actual spells. Those are things that came from witchcraft books.
No.
Yeah, that citation needed thing again?
So they keep talking about fighting. They keep talking about fighting demons. What has this demon shown up? Please, did they have this on video of something?
Oh, it's your standard exorcism crap. Yeah, but Harry Potter, I mean, a lot of those spells aren't even proper Latin, like Wingardium Leviosa. Oh yeah, I believe that's a real ancient spell.
You know what this kind of, you know what, this has to be like a viral marketing campaign for something.
Here's what Brynne said.
Harry is using this magic for good. So here we have the dangerous idea that you can use this magic for good or bad, when in reality, all magic is bad because you're getting your power from Satan.
You're like totally getting it from Satan and junk.
Like, totally.
Well, if you're wondering how this all came about, I think I've got a clue. The ringleader seems to be Brynne's father, who is televangelist Bob Larson, and he believes that about 50% of the world's population is possessed by demons. And he's tried and failed to get, really popular on his TV show where he's a faith healer and lays hands on people to heal them from hideous and dreadful diseases like homosexuality.
Now, if only we would heal them of stupidity.
That was a Dilbert cartoon. A Dogbert is sitting there with a pointed-headed boss. He says, "Out! Out, you demons of stupidity!" And then in the last panel, it's just the suit and the boss is gone. It said, "This suit is clear."
I wish there was some kind of healer on television who would basically call all these people the morons they are and try to heal that. I will heal you of your demon that is stupidity. Just imagine it. That would be TV gold.
Is there actually anything? Can they not even find one kid who will say, "Yeah, I read Harry Potter and now I totally became a witch and I can do real magic and stuff"?
This is only a funnier version of the stuff we were talking about earlier with video games.
Yeah.
This is just a more comical version, but yet we see this kind of same nonsense in the real world. Where
well, it's just because it's popular. Harry Potter is popular. Video games are popular. Anything that's popular, people are going to do this kind of stuff because it gets them attention.
And it's also anti-fun.
That too.
Still. Just why? Why do these people exist?
I refuse to believe there are people this deluded in the Western world. Maybe I'm just...
There's just no way it's not going to happen. These three just have to be this week's Idiots Extraordinaire. Well, that wraps up this Kill It with Fire edition of the Bogosity podcast. Please visit forums at bogosity.tv where you can read the show notes and join the discussion on these and other subjects. This podcast is free but not free to produce, so please donate via PayPal or Bitcoin at the top of the Bogosity.tv website or down the right-hand side of the podcast page and give generously to keep this podcast going. And if you'd like to contribute to the podcast, just send a question, statement, news article, or rant to podcast@bogosity.tv. Put it in an audio file, and if it's good enough, it'll get played right in the podcast. Thank you for listening, and thanks once more to my co-hosts, Dave Turcotte and Jonathan Loesche.
Thanks for having me on again.
Where are they? I had to throw that in.
Until next time, here's a quote from J.K. Rowling. The Potter books in general are a prolonged argument for tolerance, a prolonged plea for an end to bigotry. And I think it's one of the reasons that some people don't like the books. But I think that it's a very healthy message to pass on to younger people that you should question authority and you should not assume that the establishment or the press tells you all of the truth. Kindertotenlieder was composed by Gustav Mahler and performed by Marian Anderson, accompanied by the San Francisco Symphony Orchestra. The Bogosity podcast is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 3.0 Unported license.
Bogosity.
Do you want answers to creationist claims against evolution? Would you like to know more about evolution yourself, or even engage creationists more directly, with actual peer-reviewed sources to back you up? My book, How Evolution is Scientific, is designed to show the basics of evolutionary theory and how it is so well supported using the scientific method. It's impeccably sourced, with references to the actual scientific material, and is arranged using the creationists' own criteria of what is scientific. Using their own arguments against them, see how evolution is scientific, but creationism is not, based on observations, accurate predictions, logic, and evidence. Get answers to common creationist claims, and even a primer on abiogenesis, The Start of All Life. It's all in my book, How Evolution is Scientific, available at Amazon and on Kindle, EPUB, and PDF as well. Get How Evolution is Scientific and never be taken in by creationists again.